Okay, so we will, have a shorter schmooze today that will encapsulate what it is that we have covered so far in Siman 22, Torah 22. So like in many different Torahs, Rabbeinu is going backwards, as it were. In other words, he starts with what the goal is, and then he goes on to what will get you to that, and then he will go to the one step before that will get you to the second step, and the fourth will get you to the third step, and the fifth will get the fourth, and so on and so on. So the right order that of the Torah, which Reb Nosson actually reiterates, is that you have to have boldness, b'kedusha, and the boldness b'kedusha enables you to get close to the shepherds of the generation, from whom the seven shepherds of the generation, from whom you get emunah. And that emunah enables you to receive admonishment and rebuke from Mochichei Ador. These are that's the inner cycle of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as it were, the main tzaddikim to whom HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals what judgments have been decreed on the world. And it is their job to mitigate the judgment in a way that sort of like, you can probably call it a solving a dissonance, as it were. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Am Yisrael did something they're not supposed to do. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, obviously there's Midas Hadin. So their job is, before HaKadosh Baruch Hu, their job is to minimize the infraction and to say it's not as bad as it seems, and so on and so on, find different kind of reasons why the judgment shouldn't be harsh. And then they're supposed to go to Am Yisrael and let the Jews know that they really goofed it up. They really went, off the deep end. And so with HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying, okay, it's not as bad as it seemed, and the Jews saying, wow, this is what we did, and they walked this straight and narrow path. Altogether, the judgment still has to be there, but it's a din Torah. It's not a din achzori. It's not a cruel din. And when the way that the Rebbe actually starts the Torah and continues and builds it up, the Rebbe starts, interestingly enough, with the fact, with the kind of, we got an electrician here, so I have to be very careful with the words I use, but the shielding that these tzaddikim need to do to the fact that judgment exists, so that the chitzonians and the klippos do not suck off the judgment and corrupt it and turn it into a severe judgment. And that coating, that shielding, that is called a chosam. It's called a seal. Their job is to seal the judgment. And this is the chosam of the raglan, because their job is to advise the Kodesh Baruch Hu on one hand, and to admonish the people on the other hand. Both the advice and the fact that they go to the Yidden to admonish them is called raglim. It's called the legs, because Hashem alicha. We have Rabbi Ben Zeraya that the Eitzah is called raglim, called amasha beraglecha. All the people that that at your feet, to study at somebody's feet, as it were. So Rashi says, all those who follow your advice, follow your Eitzah. So their job is to advise the Kodesh Baruch Hu. So that's what called raglim. And then their job is to go to the Yidden and admonish them. So this is, again, it's called raglim. So this is the choisem raglim. This is the seal of the raglim. In other words, there's a shielding, an isolation coating that makes sure that the judgment is not exposed to heckling and corruption by the Kalipot, by this Sitra Achra. Now the Rebbe says that this particular chosem is sensitive, because if the Jews happen to really mess things up, that chosem may be breached. When that chosem is breached, that causes disasters in the world, and gerushim and exiles and bad stuff. So that particular isolation level is another isolation level above that, another chosem that seals the inner one. It's called chosem hayodim. This is the seal of the hands. So the seals of the legs was the thing that the tzaddik can do in order to seal the judgment of Kodesh Baruch Hu. The seal of the hands is the emunah that Am Yisrael has in order to be able to receive the admonishment from the tzaddik Yador. So then the Rebbe goes weiter and he says, okay, but so that seal, that second seal, the Yadayim, is very important, because if that is breached, then the inner seal, the Chotzim Haraglim, becomes, is in danger. The Rebbe goes on and he says, but this Chotzim Hayadi, this Emunah, has to be gotten from the Shivaroim, from 7 shepherds of the generation. Shepherds, it's shown that they shepherd the emunah, they grow the emunah, they cultivate, they rear the emunah. And the Rebbe says, yeah, but these tzaddikim, their way to them is barred by the azeponim in generation, the bald-faced people in a generation. It could be the government, it could be, people that are if you come to the Monday night share, we're learning now, we're covering Sipur and Maisis, the Maisa from the Ben Melech that was made of precious gems. And we're touching about that specific aspect of tzaddikim for samim that actually block off the way to tzaddikim emes, from whom you can get the kind of emunah that you need. And the only way that you can overcome that roadblock of the bold azeponim, from Sitra Achra, it's they have no right to block you. We have so Rabbeinu says you need boldness b'kedusha. And we touched that a few times, that boldness b'kedusha, boldness b'chlal, what does boldness mean? What is azus? The Gemara says, I think the Zohar says, Azus is Malchusa Belotaga. It's a Malchus that it's an authority that has no crown. In other words, that it's somebody that is taken over, with something who's usurping the power. That didn't get this power Mishamayim. So what he is, Azus? Azus basically is that you have the temerity and the chutzpah to want something which you do not deserve. That's Azus. Now that Azus can be Azus, the Sitra Achra, obviously, where you want the entire world. Or you don't have enough. No, I want more. I want the entire world. Why? Because I want it. I mean, what do you deserve it? I don't care. That's what I want. But the same thing also applies to Azus the Kedusha. Azus the Kedusha is the thing that enables you to get close to the tzaddikim and close to the Kodesh Baruch Hu, even though I don't deserve it. That's Azus the Kedusha. And then when Rabbeinu finished establishing that particular groundwork, Rabbeinu goes into saying, how do you get this Azus the Kedusha? Obviously, that's the key. That's the key to start the process, to reaffirm, to get the Emunah, establish Chosim HaYadin, and protect the Chosim HaRaglin, and make sure that the judgment always remains a din Torah, and Chas v'Chalila, not a din Achzari. And we explained that the difference between din Torah and din Achzari is that din Torah has a purpose of getting you closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what they say. Anybody who doesn't discipline his children hates them. I mean, you have to give them boundaries. So a boundaries is a din Torah. A boundary is aimed to better whatever it is that you're trying to lead. But it can become din achzori if it's done something, if somebody is subjecting his children to a din achzori, because he pours his own frustrations and his own pain on his children. What happens is, instead of actually getting them closer, it drives them away. So it's a very, it's a very crucial role that Tzadikei Ador actually fulfill. Rabbeinu says, how do you get Azus the Kedusha? Rabbeinu says, Azus the Kedusha you get through sounds, voices. He says about the Kodesh Baruch Hu, "Ayin yikra bekoiloi koil oiz." Kodesh Baruch Hu will sound with his voice, koil oiz, a voice of boldness, of starkheit, of strength. So Ben says basically any kind of voice is Azus. When you say something, even if you're begging, listen, I want, and therefore I'm coming and I'm asking from you. It all starts with me wanting. There is a certain aspect of boldness already there. Rabbeinu says that the sounds that produce Azus is crying out, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, crying out is Azus the Kedusha, and singing is Azus the Kedusha, can bring it to Azus the Kedusha. And Rabbeinu says that a sigh, a groan, is Azus the Kedusha, brings you to Azus, brings you Azus the Kedusha. And then when Rabbeinu says what is actually yeah. When Rabbeinu actually expounds what does Azus do, that it enables, the soul and the body to get together. He uses only he mentions only the anoch, the sigh, the groan. He doesn't mention the crying. Later on, he mentions the shofar. The kol shofar is another kol oz, and he got the kol oz. So we're speaking of a shofar, various aspects of the shofar that fit into this. But the interesting thing that is worth mentioning here is Rabbeinu Dafka touches that nekuda of anocha, of sighing, of groaning. The question is, why does Rabbeinu Dafka chooses that over crying out, which Rabbeinu speaks about Terech Hafalev, and singing, which Rabbeinu speaks about different Torahs, about singing. Over here, you're talking about the best way to acquire as the Kedusha. He takes the example of Anaha, of Asai. The answer, a possible answer, obviously, is that crying out and singing and davening and all these things are active, are action. It's a forceful action. It would seem that anocha, a sigh, a groan, is not really an active action to get you to where you want, but rather an admission of defeat. I can't do it. I can't cry out. I don't feel like crying out. I can get myself to sit down and make his way to this. I cannot get myself to sit down and learn. I cannot get myself to daven like a mensch. A lot of different things that I can't do. So the sigh is actually an expression of what a loser I am. But Rabbeinu brings a nekuda, which is very important for us as Breslovers to really grasp and understand. Anocha, asai, is a simon that you have not given up. Because anybody who has given up does not sigh anymore. That's what they say about Bnei Yisrael. Vayamas Melech Mitzrayim, Paro died. V'yanchu Bnei Yisrael mina avoda. Am Yisrael starting sighing from, groaning from the avoda. Rabbeinu mentions it on that the shofar is B'chinas Yom, that, and Rabbeinu says why this certain B'china is a shofar. He says because it says about Yom, about day, and shofar is a mitzvah is by day. Okay, so what? Why does it bring to that? So the Parparos says that mitzvah shofar by day, azus the kedusha by day means that you have to have some cognition that you're in trouble in order to cry out. Am Yisrael did not groan from the avodah before the death of Melech Mitzrayim because they were so desperate that they did not groan anymore. They were in the dark. It's B'chinas Laila. It's only when there's a shtickle saying Melech Mitzrayim died and the total, the blanket darkness was removed from them a little bit, they realized in what straits they were. And they were able to groan. They were able to sigh. A sigh means you belong to that. You belong to the Kedusha. All these things that you sigh about, why don't I daven the way I'm supposed to? Why don't I learn the way I'm supposed to? Why don't I make this this? Why, when I'm singing this I can't even say a word to Kadosh Baruch Hu? Or maybe I can say a couple of words and then I just fall off or whatever, and then I slough off. Why is that? It's a statement that you belong with that. You belong to davening. You belong to learning. You belong to making this. You belong to the Kedusha. Because otherwise you wouldn't sigh. What are you sighing about? A goy doesn't sigh because he doesn't sit and learn Torah. A goy sighs because his team didn't win the World Series. You know, or the wine that he drinks is not that kind of vintage that he would like it to be. Sigh is basically the declaration that you have not given up. It's also a very, very deep declaration of emunah. I believe that if I sigh, I can cry out, I can pray, I daven from beginning to end. I don't even know what I said, what I didn't say. Sometimes I recognize a few words here, certain brachas that I maybe, some refuah, maybe some money, maybe some this, some that, but the rest I'm just flying over. The fact that I'm sighing, I cannot do any of these things, but I'm not giving up. I'm sighing. I wish I did. And the thing is that I believe that through sighing, I will get closer. By sighing, I will get the Azus de Kedusha. If you remember, when we learned Torah Ches, Chelek Aleph, while in olden days when we were still in the shul eating popcorn, we learned that the sigh brings you Ruach Chaim from the Tzaddik Emes Shabador. Zut Tzaddik, that he is the source for all Ruach Chaim. Isha Ruach Boy. When you sigh, why am I not doing what I should be doing? You're tying yourself to it. You're expressing the fact, what we're learning is that it ties you to it, and not only that it ties you to it, it gets you closer to it. If you sigh, why don't I cry out? You will get to crying out. If you sigh, why am I not learning? You will get to learning. If you groan, why am I not making Isbaidus? You will get to make Isbaidus. Sighing and groaning means you have not given up. It's a tremendously powerful lesson. You can say that this is the weapon of the incompetent. So be it. It's actually the weapon of those who seem incompetent, because those who sigh means that they are under such pressure from the enemy, not to lift their heads, not to lift their eyes, not to get close to Kodesh Baruch Hu, not to get close to the tzaddik, not to get close to the Torah, not to get close to the mitzvahs. They can't even move. The only thing they can do is sigh. There's no bigger fighting in the trenches than that. Okay, we have managed to, sneak something in. Basically, we have, I just want to remind you that we are starting at 9 o'clock instead of 9:15. Or at least we're trying to get started at 9 o'clock, to be more precise. So I want to, B'ezrat Hashem, wish you all good Shabbos. And hopefully I will be able to see you on Motzei Shabbos, as we were learning Sipur Baal Shem Tov and Sichos Haran, and we are having yourself some good time. So B'ezrat Hashem should all have Hatzlacha b'chol inyan, have a good Shabbos.